I'm pretty bullish in the sense that I think that we're going to continue to grow. We're going to attract the right people, but we need to present the trades in a professional way. It can't be seen, as standing in the van and Chuck in the truck and this whole unprofessional image. And that's what we've tried to create here is a professional image that people can be proud of and that kids can say, yeah, that's where my dad works. I'm proud of that.
Welcome to the Waste No Day podcast, a podcast specifically for and about the home services industry as it relates to plumbing, heating, air conditioning, and electrical. More than a podcast, Waste No Day is a credo, a determination, a mindset. It is a never-ending discipline. It is a refuse to lose pursuit. It is a wake-up call every morning to waste no day. Now here's your hosts, Brian Burton and Nate Minnick.
Hey, welcome to another episode of the Waste No Day podcast. Your hosts, Nate and Brian, hanging out with you on this new Monday morning. And we are really excited and honored to have our guest on today. One of the owners at the business where Brian and I work, Mr. Matt Buckwalter, will be joining us today to talk about his story and the opportunities that he has seen and been granted along the way. Before we jump into that conversation, hold your breath because Brian's got our quote.
The door of opportunity will only open when you decide to step outside the door of your own comfort zone. Kylie Francis.
All right, cool. Opportunity is the key word that we're going to be focusing on today. And as we begin our conversation with Matt, what we're going to be exploring is the opportunities that not only were given to him, but that he has in turn turned around and then given to others. It's a really cool story, a really good impact to see somebody go from, we'll call it rags to riches. Rags to riches, right, Brian?
Yep, close enough. Nate and I are recipients of Matt and his partner Scott's generosity and desire to create opportunities around them. And they in turn hand that honor to us and Aaron Buckwalter, the management team, to do the same. And we call it setting up ladders around the building. We strive constantly to make sure that there are ways for people who are ambitious and driven and fill all of our four of our core values, that they have a ladder to climb, a way to get out of the whatever position they're in and keep growing, keep moving up.
Yeah, we've talked about the concept before of helping others get what they want, and this is really a shoe leather story of that actually happening. Matt's story is not one of just, ease of life and the highway being put before him while somebody else drives the car. No, his life was not one that was particularly easy. While raised in a good family, he was still given the opportunity and encouraged to have the hard work to actually capitalize on it. And that's something that, we really respect here, kind of a self-made man, you might say. And it's something that, we want all of our employees to have the opportunity to do the same themselves, regardless of their background. Opportunity is one of those things that is so key because, if you've ever heard the definition of luck before, Brian.
When preparation meets opportunity.
Absolutely. You'll hear people say, oh, that guy just got lucky, or, yeah, man, I wish I had that type of luck. Well, yeah, sometimes opportunities come and go with the days of life, but it's the preparation for it that makes the difference in so many ways. And the fact of the matter is that we will all be presented with many opportunities over the course of our life and our career. And it's the preparation and our willingness to jump into something and out of that comfort zone that often makes the difference.
Right. When we say we put ladders up around the building for people who are driven and want to move up and forward in their career, these are people who are already looking and ready and searching for an opportunity to come out of their truck to go from shop tech, from running parts and sweeping to getting into their own truck, or even to become a supervisor, field supervisor, service manager. So they're already preparing for that. Now we do help and coach and guide people on things that they need to do to more and better prepare for the next step, but they are already looking for that next step.
You might say they're seekers of opportunity.
Yeah, preparers. And that is how you always have to be thinking if you feel like you're somebody who's destined for greater things than you are now. If you're somebody who feels like you have a calling and you're on your way to something bigger and better, then you have to constantly be training for whatever that bigger and better thing is. And, you know, our credo, our mantra here at Waste No Day is what are you doing in your downtime? And no bigger downtime for a technician than windshield time. When you're just driving around staring at the glass, then this is when you need to do the largest part of your training. This is the most free time you'll have in your career. Can't do it when you're with the customer. Some people do it when they're actually doing a job by way of having like one earbud in. Like if I was on a dig job or an all day, you know, repipe or under a mobile home or something, I actually always did have one earphone in and listening to something off of my phone, like a audiobook or something like that. Once those capabilities came about. Actually, what was was it AirPod?
They're currently called AirPods.
Not AirPods. What was the iPod?
That was the original phone without a phone.
Yeah, the
player.
iPod.
Yeah.
I had an iPod. I remember now. Kept in my shirt pocket, doing big jobs, and just had my headphones out and one headphone in one of my ears and listening to audiobooks while I worked. And I was talking to somebody recently who said, "Man, I have to listen to the episodes over and over again because I'm not catching most of it." And I said,
well, you could be fair and say that Brian's not catching most of it either.
No, I'm trying to do some texting here.
Were you talking to your Amelia?
But he said, I can't retain Moses. I have to listen over and over to catch what I didn't catch the first time. And that, whether you listen to something over and over or not, it doesn't matter. Your subconscious is picking that stuff up, which is why I would have it playing all the time. I'd be lost in thought like anybody, just, thinking about the next call or when I get home or, the weekend or whatever you're thinking about, your goals, hopefully, where you're trying to get in your career. Everybody will get lost and kind of tune out and it becomes white noise. But I always felt like even if I wasn't actively listening to it, I was picking stuff up. And I remember I would say and do things that I thought, wow, where'd that come from?
I'm not that profound. That's what you were thinking. Well, Brian, I'm actually going to go the other direction on it. You were talking about how if you feel like you have a calling or you're destined for greatness, you're the type of person who needs to be preparing for that. I fully agree with you on that, but I think there's equal amount of people out there who feel opposite of that, and they feel like they're not destined for greatness, or they feel lost, or they don't have a direction or a calling in their life. And for those people, we empathize with you, because not all of us have that clear vision or that clear understanding. But I still believe that there is opportunities to be capitalized on. You just might not have the sense of them right now. And it might feel a little confusing about what you're supposed to be focusing on. But improving yourself or improving the skills that you have right now in whatever career you're in right now could have growth potential for you. And if that's not the case, then look around and say, well, what do I really want to do? Where do I want to be focusing on? I know in Matt's story, there was a certain level of that exploration in his own life where he was trying to figure out what is the career type that's going to allow me the lifestyle, both financially and freedom-wise, that I want. And then he's decided to pursue that. And if you're feeling like you don't have direction in your life right now, if you're feeling like you're a little lackluster on your opportunities right now, realize that's okay. And you're not alone in that. But within that moment, we encourage you to sit down, to take some quiet time, to actually start looking at your future and where you want to go. If opportunities aren't beating down your door, then make your own opportunities and go beat down somebody else's door and ask for the job or ask for something new, ask for another challenge. But the way that you do that that's going to be most effective is by preparing yourself for those types of things. If I want to go lift weights with Brian, I'm not at his level, so I can't just go over and start benching 300 pounds like Brian does. I got to prepare myself to even have that conversation and say, yo, man, can I lift with you? And in doing so, that's going to take work on my end. And that's kind of where we come back to the waste no day, right? Waste no day, meaning that whatever opportunities that you are pursuing or that are being asked of you right now or offered to you right now, pursue them and pursue the preparation that it takes to capitalize on those opportunities. That's more of what we're going to be talking about today as we put Matt Buckwalter in your passenger seat. Our guest today is none other than Matt Buckwalter. He is one of the owners at the Lancaster branch in Pennsylvania of 1 Hour Heating and Air Conditioning, Benjamin Franklin Plumbing, and Mr. Sparky Electric. Graduating with a degree in psychology from Eastern Mennonite University and also having a bit of athletic heritage in his past at Penn State University, Matt brings a whole new perspective to the trades. I would not call him an insider, so to speak. He's more of an outsider, bringing in a lot of leadership and visionary perspective into the trades. He has seen his fair share of trade experience with not only working in Lancaster, but also in California in GM positions, install manager positions, and now, of course, as owner and visionary in the company that we work for. Matt has a loving family at home. He has 3 children and a wife, Kelly, who are the biggest supporters that he has, and he is constantly focusing on what it means to define culture, not only within the organization that he works, but I believe in so many ways outside of that in the organizations and boards and influences that he has in the circles that he runs. With that, we are so excited to have you on the show, Matt. Welcome.
Thanks, Nate. Appreciate it. Glad
Great to
be
finally
here.
have you on, boss. It's been, 10 months now we've been trying to get you on since our first episode.
You're a tough man to get.
Well, let me tell you, I'm proud of the work you guys have done. I'm proud of Waste No Day podcast.
Hey, we get it. You're a busy guy. You have to vet your opportunities and wanted to see if we'd last.
Yep.
That is not the case.
We had to get to 10 months before we'd sign up.
That is not. I wanted to make sure it was successful first.
Exactly. Oh, it's raving successful.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I can tell.
Dozens
now that
dozens
you're
of people agree.
There we go.
Yeah.
All of whom work here.
Yeah, there's a lot of great guests that you've had before me. So I sit in this chair and kind of humbled. In some ways, so,
Yes. You sit in the shadow of greatness.
That's right.
Yeah. Not too many of them have sat in the chair lately either. It's been a lot of phone interviews.
Yeah.
So has it been maybe since the crypto episode that
I
we've
think
had?
so. It's exciting to have somebody in our studio.
That's good.
Yeah.
Well, it's good to be here. It's
Somebody
good
to
be
stare
here.
at besides Nate for once. It's
Yeah,
nice.
absolutely.
That's right. I sit in this studio, a lot during the course of the week, or when I come in here. But it's good to have some headphones on and
Now you got the mic in your face,
and
right?
a mic in my face. Exactly.
For all 6 of the listeners who don't work here, as Nate would say, the studio is also subs as Brian Burton's office. So
Yeah.
Matt spends some time in here.
Love it. Love it.
I think at this point, that is the correct phrasing of it. The studio works as your office. It used to be your office works as the studio,
Yeah,
but
that's true.
we've now surpassed what you do.
Yeah, that's pretty true.
That's what 10 Ments will do.
All right, Matt. Well, it's good to have you on, man. And obviously we've had a long working relationship, so I know a lot of your story, but for the sake of our listeners, we want to dig in and we want to hear who you are and what you're all about and how the life events and the ups and downs of what you've gone through in your many years of not only life experience, but in the trades business, how all that has developed you and involved you into the person that you've become today. And so much of that is wrapped up in not only the foresight and the vision that you have, but also the execution of it. Because it's one thing to be the dreamer and have the great ideas. It's another thing to actually capitalize on that momentum and take it into something that has shoe leather. And you have done that in so many ways, not just in this business, but across different vectors of your life. That's who you are. And so we want to kind of get at the root of that and understand more about what it is that has created the Matt Buckwalter that we see today. So if you'd be so kind to kind of start wherever you think it's appropriate to begin that story for us.
Well, you know, I'm the firstborn of three. I think my brother was one of the first guests on this podcast.
The first guest.
Yep. Who is 6 years younger than I am. And actually, I think my sister was on this podcast too.
About 20 years more immature, too,
Okay.
I'll point out.
That's my brother,
The brother,
that is.
not the sister.
My sister is way more mature than he and I.
We love you, Rachel.
Yeah. So, you know, and I'm fortunate, I will say, to be able to work with my siblings in a way that I have a tremendous amount of respect for each one of them and the gifts that they have and what they bring to our business here. But, you know, my story obviously starts, I was born in 1973.
With a silver spoon in your hand?
Yeah, right. I was not born with a silver spoon in my hand, but my dad met my mother, I understand, at a local swimming pool and fell in love at first sight, apparently. And I heard it was a yellow bikini that did it for him.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, I don't know if he's listening to this. But anyway, I was, and they were really from two different worlds. My dad was the son of a Mennonite deacon. My mom was the oldest of 10 in a Catholic family that grew up on Cabbage Hill, which is an area in Lancaster that's close by here. And they got together, and I was the result of that. So fast forward, it was very interesting to have those two worlds kind of come together and create for me a unique background and perspective. But I always felt that I always enjoyed leading. I always enjoyed being a part of athletic teams. I was a 4-sport varsity athlete in high school. I think I still hold the most amount of varsity letters earned at my high school, which is 13.
Nice.
It's just kind of interesting. And then went on to Penn State to run track. I was a decathlete there, a state champion in high school in the pole vault, was a sprinter. So I had a little unfortunate event my senior year at Penn Relays. I fractured my 5th lumbar vertebrae in my back, which was a big setback for me, and it kind of created some challenges going into Penn State, and there was some recovery that was pretty difficult. But I was immobilized for about 6 or 7 months in a brace, so that fracture could heal. And what I realized is that, you know, at that moment that there's more to life than just sport. But
Yeah.
in addition to that, you know, being able to move and taking care of your body was also pretty important to me. So competed at Penn State for 2 years in track. It was great. I mean, it pushed me to a level that I was not used to, certainly in high school. I was a big fish in a small pond in the state of Pennsylvania. You go to Penn State and you compete in the Big Ten, and you realize pretty quickly that you're a small fish in a pretty big pond.
Right.
Which was good. And then the end of my sophomore year, I transferred to Eastern Mennonite University, which is where my degree's from, and that was a total shift. What I realized at that time is I was kind of burnt out with athletics. I was burnt out with sports at a high level. I wasn't doing real great in school. Probably doing a little bit more partying than what I should have been doing. Didn't have my priorities right, and sometimes you just have to make a shift, a scene shift. And that's what it was for me. And I enjoyed immensely my time down in Virginia, and ended up getting a degree in psychology, and was the best decision I made. So I, thinking about, fast forwarding, one of the things that I realized that I wanted to do is I wanted to lead an organization. And ultimately, as I've observed others that were successful and interviewed a lot of different people after graduation and just kind of trying to figure out what I wanted to do, I figured out pretty quickly that business owners have pretty cool opportunities in life. There's a lot of risk, but you kind of set your own destiny. You kind of can chart your own course. It sounds cliche to say you're your own boss, but you're essentially your own boss.
Right.
And I and nobody's telling you you make too much money. Nobody's telling you that you don't work hard enough. Nobody's telling you you're working too hard. And I found that I was, through all of those years of sport, a lot of my sports were individual. Track certainly is that, and pole vaulting certainly is that. So you understand what it is to manage and to discipline yourself in ways that transferred very well to business life. But I wasn't sure, I didn't have any money. I wasn't sure really how to create an opportunity for myself. So what I realized is that selling, being a comfort advisor in our world, was about as close to owning your own business as what I could find. It's commission only. The good thing is that, and the thing I liked is I didn't have to generate my own leads. I was given opportunities, but I could go out and I could work as hard as I want and achieve whatever level of success I thought I could do. And it was a great, great opportunity for me. So that's when I met Larry Rohr. We actually moved, my wife, Kelly and I moved into a home in Landisville, and just so happened that Larry and Kara Rohr owned that home. And we were renting from them at the time because we weren't sure where we wanted to live. So we figured we'll rent for a year, and they just happened to own the home. And I was entertaining a couple different offers for employment. And it became apparent that I was not really intrigued by any of those things. And Larry's like, well, during the interview process, he said, well, what exactly do you do for work? I said, well, I don't have a job.
And that was the interview process to rent.
To rent, correct.
Yeah, right.
To rent the house. And he's like, well, maybe you should come and work for me. And I said, okay, tell me about that. And so that he said, well, come and meet me the next day and we'll talk about it. So that was a Tuesday. We met on a Wednesday. And by the end of the day, I said, I'm in. And my only criteria was I just needed an opportunity where I could make $100,000 a year, because I figured that was enough money for me to be able to live a lifestyle I wanted back then. And this was like, 2000. But also that my wife and we were kind of wanted to amass a down payment to buy a house. We wanted to start a family. And we felt that it was important to us that she be able to stay home and to raise the kids. And I thought that was a number for me. That was a good number to make that work. Well, the first year I made $96,000, full commission salesperson.
Selling HVAC equipment.
$4,500, $5,000 average ticket across the table. I mean, the average tickets today are, $10,000 to $12,000, put it in perspective. But I was super stoked and I was hooked. I mean, it created for me an opportunity to be able to have the flexibility I needed to take care of the things. I was able to pay down all of my college debt that I had amassed when I transferred, to a private university. I was able to take care of my wife's college debt, and we were able to start a fund to buy or for a down payment on a house, all of which I was able to take care of in that 1 year.
Yeah.
Because, prior to that, I think I was making like $25,000, $30,000 a year. So it was nice to be able to have that opportunity, and I am forever grateful for that. But Larry, for me, was much more than just a boss. He was a mentor. He was somebody that took an interest in me and showed a level of care and interest in me and invested in me. And that is what I think is even more valuable than the money that he provided me in terms of a job. I mean, I needed the money, but he believed in me. He believed in my skills. He invested to develop them. I mean, one of the things that we send all of our sales members team through here and our managers is the Sandler sales training process. He invested in that for me, and that was the very first thing that for me it clicked about. Hey, this is really how a high quality sales process works and what it looks like. And I'm convinced that that selling system over the last 20 years of my life has paid me tens of millions of dollars. I mean, it's been that impactful in my life. And, it really kind of sets the framework for how we approach selling here as an organization in our business. But Larry made that happen for me. And, fast forward, I mean, I had a lot of success in selling, in 2004, 2005. Actually prior to that, it's funny because there was a post the other day, about the,
Crown
Champion ring. So I own ring 007, which
cool.
is the very first ring by a salesperson. If you look at the previous 6, they were not. They were either managers.
It was John Young, Jim Abrams, Terry Nicholson. Yes.
Yeah. Tom Hopkins got one of those. Who else was on that list? I mean, we can pull it and find. More importantly, I was number 7, which was the first one.
So Matt, I want to kind of pause you there as we explore the origin story, you might say, of where you are today, because I think there's a lot of things to unpack there. So much of who we are is shaped in our growing up years and our young adult years that really sets course for who we will become as we mature. And so as you look back across, kind of your upbringing, your collegiate years and those types of things that shaped and formed you into who you are today, can you identify any moments, any of those why in the road type moments where you chose this way and it led to the outcome that we see?
Yeah. Well, there's a couple. I mean, one of them is and it's usually around educational institutions. So very interestingly, my kindergarten through 8th grade year, I went to a private Mennonite school, which was a wonderful place to go to school. I had great teachers. I had awful teachers in that school. But I all in all, it was an environment that I felt safe in. It allowed me to grow. I think at some level it pushed me academically, but I wasn't really concerned about that, in elementary school. And then and through junior high, I was there till 8th grade. And then I transferred to a public high school in 9th grade, which was a much bigger school. And for me, it was kind of like this opportunity to spread my wings and try different things. And that's when I discovered I was involved in student leadership. I was, president of student council, class president, did all of that stuff. And I realized something in high school is that people have a strong desire to be led. And that's when there's always, there's vacuums that exist. And the reality is that people are looking for somebody to step into that role to lead. And that was a pretty profound understanding for me, because I always enjoyed leading, but as an elementary kid, you don't want to be perceived maybe in some as that pushy bully, kid that forces his way in the lead. But what I discovered in high school is that people actually have a desire to be led, and good leadership is so necessary. I'm not saying I was a great leader in high school, but the understanding of that concept and the investing that happened thereafter to develop that in myself is something that I took pretty seriously in terms of the books that I read. In my college years, going to Penn State, had a great time, met a lot of great people, but I kind of got off track, in some ways. And when I went to Eastern Mennonite University, I was able to focus in on, it was a much smaller school. I was concentrated on some wonderful, fabulous relationships that I made there. But it really, again, focused on, hey, it's time to get serious about what it is that you want to do. All of the time through college, what the other thing is that created in me is I didn't have much. So I was doing more with less because I had to. I didn't have a choice. I remember when I was living on, I could make 10 to 15 bucks a week work for me. I'd have an old Volkswagen Rabbit diesel that I'd put $5 worth of diesel fuel in, and it would get me through the week, and I could live on a whole lot less. My world is a little different now, but
you spent $15 on that coffee.
Yeah. It doesn't take long to rip through $15, but on the same token, I think it shapes kind of how I how I view life. And I think as my kids are growing up very differently than I grew up, but I think that that doesn't mean that they can't learn the value of a dollar. It doesn't mean that they can't understand the value of hard work. They're all athletes. My son is a Division I soccer player. My daughter will play Division I field hockey in the fall. And for them, the hard work was developed and understood to get to that level. I mean, you just don't get to, my daughter, will play Big Ten field hockey in the next fall. And that's some of the highest level field hockey in the country. And you don't get there by not working hard. And I've seen the hard work that she's done. So many of those experiences, and same with my son. I mean, in soccer, to get to the Division I level, the dedication that he had to put through in the development academy in high school was, I mean, he was training every day of the week to get to where he was. So those things for them were kind of the same for me in terms of those defining moments. I never focused that much on one thing. My focus was over a broad range of activities. But what I realized is that when I got through college and I figured out what I wanted to do, this area was the area that I put my focus in. And heating and air conditioning was just a vehicle, but what I'm saying, leadership it was for me. After I graduated from college, and I thought about what is it that gets your juices flowing? What is the thing that you're most excited about? And I think the thing that gets me most excited is looking at how can I create opportunities for others? That's the thing. So I tend to be a connector of people. I like to bring people together. But the other piece of it is how can I create opportunities for others? Not only for, my management team that I work with, but also with the group of technicians that we have, our office staff. All of those individuals are recipients of opportunities that we've created here at our organization. And that's what gets me excited. So that's, so as we sit back and we look at, hey, the last 20 years as we've grown from 25 people to 100, and as we look ahead to what does 250 look like, what does 500 look like, as we're strategic in terms of looking at the future, that's the thing that I get most excited about. And it's the thing that drove me from, hey, I wanted to be a comfort advisor and do selling in the home, to how can I create a business opportunity and that will provide opportunity for others.
So, Matt, it sounds to me like at even a fairly young age, you were already aspiring to leadership, or it at least had an interest in your life that was above average, that you were pursuing those types of things. You said you were reading books, you were pursuing that type of knowledge, and you were, shall we say, drawn to it.
I was. I mean, yeah, I really was. I mean, in some ways, I think it was the product of being a firstborn. And I think in addition to that, both of my parents were firstborn. So my mom was the oldest of 10. My dad was the oldest of 5.
It's a lot of genes working for you.
It's a lot of genes. And I don't want to, I know there's a lot of, science and research that's around birth order. And I don't want to go into that, but it's very rare that 2 firstborns get married. and
there's going to be fireworks.
And there, and there was, and there is. I mean, it's not it's very interesting that I'm the product of those 2 firstborns. So I think there is, and I think I've used this term. I mean, I think there's been an anointing on my life of leadership and in my journey that I could either choose to embrace or choose to run away from. I've chose to embrace it. And it's not without its hardships and its challenges, but you know what? It's proven to be very rewarding. And it's awesome to see, how people, when given opportunities, step up. I mean, And honestly, I think both of you are great examples of that. And you know, we all have a journey and a story to tell. And I'm super excited to see how we've all kind of walked along this journey and what that looks like for each one of us.
And speaking of walking along the journey, Matt, we kind of took a pause there as you were ready to set sail and head to the great Western California state. So if we could jump back into that and picking up kind of where we left off there, you had stepped into the trades in, shall we say, a fortunate meeting with an owner of a local HVAC company, plumbing company, who gave you that opportunity. And you worked with Larry for a couple years and then decided it was time to move to greener pastures, or what was the calling to California?
So what the calling to California was is I think at that moment in time I had made a determination that probably the next step for me in my journey was to try to figure out how could I become a business owner or have a little bit more. What I realized is after selling for that many years, I probably had reached my peak in terms of income potential, just based on the fact that I couldn't work any harder than what I was doing. And, you know, as a full commission salesperson, you have a limited amount of time, and I had to try to figure out how could I get people working for me to maximize my time, quite frankly. And it was about the same time that Larry was trying to understand what the best succession plan for him was for his family. And it became apparent that maybe at that time the best plan was to sell the business. So he had planned to roll it up as a part of an initial public offering, and to Clockwork, which was the owners of the brands at the time, the 1 Hour Ben Franklin brand. It became pretty apparent to me that the opportunity that I had here was limited if he was going to do that. Scott was going to stay on and serve as general manager of the business, and
Scott is your business partner and Larry's son.
Yes, Scott is business partner and Larry's son, and so there was an opportunity for me. The franchise had an opportunity for me in Culver City, California, at Continental Heating and Cooling, which then became Continental 1 Hour Heating and Air Conditioning, and I went out there. I was ambitious, I was excited, I was naive, and moved my family out to, we lived in the Pacific Palisades and went to work in California. That was probably one of the best learning lessons of my life, and it was an absolute failure. So and you know, the interesting thing is, and I won't go into all the details, but I will say that I think that the franchise owned that business for 3 or 4 years. There were 17 GMs in that business since they owned it. I was the first one, and I was there for about 9 months. So that gives you an idea of. I mean, there was a bunch of challenges, and it was the best learning lesson, you know, in terms of a business lesson that I could learn. I mean,
well, so many times the failures in our life are actually the bigger pieces of our story in driving the next iteration of ourselves than the successes, right?
Yes, it was, and that's exactly what it was. I mean, it was just, you know, there, as David Sandler always said, there's no, you know, failures, or there's no. But there's only lessons learned, and that was a lesson learned. And I learned a lot about myself. I learned about a lot about how I handle stress and pressure. Came back with an ulcer, which was a challenge, and I didn't even realize that. Didn't even know what an ulcer was, but it was. It's California is a beautiful, beautiful place, and the opportunities are limitless. But the bigger thing that I took away from that is I needed to build a team, and I needed to build my team, and I didn't have my team in place. And when I was out there, and it was a big challenge. I mean, there was a lot of challenges that I'm not sure that having the right team would have got through, but it would have made it easier. And so when I came, and at the same time, Larry and Scott were gracious and invited me to come back, and gave me the opportunity to buy a small piece of the business, which was setting up for a future opportunity when Larry wanted to move on, for Scott and I to buy him out. But so there was such a blessing in that, and there was such a great amount of learning that happened in the course of that year that prepared me for the next step of my leadership journey. And I wasn't really aware of what that would end up being at the time. It's only in retrospect that I find that how valuable that time was. Extraordinarily painful. I mean, it was painful. So, but it taught me a lot of wonderful lessons. So yeah, that California was great. Love hearing the stories about, Service Champions and what they're doing out there. And I watched them from afar, and we weren't too far away, but there's a lot of great operators in California, and it's a wonderful place. It just we just didn't have a lot of success at Continental.
So you returned to Pennsylvania with the opportunity for what I would imagine was the next step in your career, and really not only in just ownership, building the team, leadership, all those types of things, as well as financial opportunity. And so in making that move and coming, you might say coming back home, what was some of those lessons that you had learned? Like what was one or two of the biggest things that you brought back from the West Coast into this new version of who you were going to be?
So the biggest thing that I had to get my brain around is I was offered a job when I came back as a service manager. So, which was kind of interesting because that was what I was offered, by Larry, to come back, and it's an area of the business that they needed, that we here needed some help in. And so, and I'll never forget this. I think the salary of that job was $75,000 a year.
Yeah. Nice step back from GM, I'm sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think my comp plan the year before was over 300.
Wow. So
now I will say this, living in Lancaster is less expensive than living in California. However, it's not that less expensive.
Yeah, right.
So, but you know what? I was confident in the opportunity. I knew that this too shall pass in terms of what it was, and we were determined to be profitable in that sector of the business and turned that around. And that didn't last long, but it was what it did for me is, as we do with many of our managers, we pay based on performance. So we don't believe in large inflated salaries. We believe in paying somebody for a job well done and paying them well for that. And that kind of started. So I had to live that out. And I know what that's like to be able to have to, to perform and to budget that first year to make sure that it worked. And my wife was just like, we're going to do what? I had some money tucked away. That was fine. But we had to be serious about how we spent our money and how we utilized our money. And I look back on that year as just a wonderful year of, how should I say this? There's a lot of pride in that year because of that transition.
That's a massive adjustment.
And I say to this day, if I had to do it again, I could do it again. I mean, it would be on a different scale, no doubt. But it was not a problem for me to do that when I understood what was ahead. And that was a big deal. So I came back as a service manager. We were having some challenges in our service department, made some changes. And I want to say that I'd love to be able to say that it was like a magic bullet and everything hummed. And I mean, that was a whole major shift in terms of how we go to market and do business. We were not doing well at offering customer options. We had a lot of old school technicians that were negative in terms of their I say negative, meaning their attitudes were such that this won't work. Customers aren't going to be interested in these things. And we had to move through that. We did. And then from there, we had some challenges in install. So I served as install manager for a little bit, which was a great lesson to be learned for me. So what I was doing over that time is I was learning the ins and outs of our business, because I'm not a technical person. I had to force myself to learn that stuff. And it was extraordinarily valuable and very, very rewarding for me to do that. Very different than what I would have thought. I mean, it was a full MBA program in the HVAC, plumbing, electrical business over the course of about 3 or 4 years.
School of hard knocks.
The school of hard knocks. And I will say, the other thing that me going to California gave was the opportunity for my brother Aaron. He stepped into my role as sales guy when I left. And that was a great opportunity for him to get integrated in our business. So one more blessing that came out of that pretty challenging situation.
Right. So fast forwarding a little bit there, obviously Larry did step out of the business then on a retirement basis,
Yep.
and you and Scott formed what we see now, which is the current partnership that you and he exist in. And interestingly enough, a little bit ago, we did a podcast about traction and the EOS system. We had not Gino Wickman, but his co-author, Mike Payton on with us. Yep. And in that system, it identifies 2 different types of leaders that are often found in organizations. One of those is known as the integrator, which is somebody who kind of takes all the wild ideas and puts them into actual, paper and process and carries them out, executes them. In the podcast, it talked about keeping the trains running on time.
Yep.
The other one is the visionary, which is, like I said, the person with the big ideas who's looking towards the future, who's always concerned about culture. Which direction are we going? Why are we going there? How can we talk about this to our people? And as you and Scott developed that relationship, it kind of took on a natural fulfillment of those roles where Scott was filling in as the integrator and you were filling in as the visionary. Talk a little bit about how that fulfillment of the visionary was established throughout all those years of leadership, training, and looking for those things and studying in that area and learning all those lessons to the visionary that you've become today.
Yeah. That's a great question. There's a lot there. Yeah. I truly feel that when Scott and I hit our stride was really when we discovered those 2 roles.
Right.
And it was, Scott is an incredibly gifted integrator. In fact, probably one of the best integrators that I've ever come across in terms of just how he looks at stuff. And it's and where he, lacks in certain areas, I fill in. And where I lack in certain areas, he fills in. So it's
that complementary relationship.
It's extraordinarily complementary. What along the way, it's interesting because, our vision of and how we view leadership is oftentimes shaped around what our giftings are. And I think one of the things that I've always been gifted is I can look into I don't want to say it's not like I'm fortune telling, but I can look into the future and I can see trends. I can understand things that potentially happen, because one of the things that I think that I'm better at than most is I have a reasonably high level of EQ. So I understand, cues as they interact with people, maybe understanding more of the things that are unspoken than maybe those things that are spoken. And I think that, so I always, those are the things that are unseen, which are oftentimes the things that are the most important. And so as I develop that in terms of my own skill and visionary. It's not something that I spend a lot of time developing. It's just intuitively how I view the world. And the visionary, oftentimes businesses, it's rare that they have both a visionary and an integrator together. And some of the most successful businesses that you'll see do share those complementary roles in individuals because they're so very different from one another. I think for me, in terms of developing, I've never been happy with the status quo. And maybe that goes back to my competitive days as an athlete. I always wanted to achieve at the highest level and push myself, say, what could it take to get there? And I think we do that in our business, right? We think about what is it going to take to achieve at the high level in our business, and how are we going to move ourselves to the next level? So yeah, we've achieved the highest, top line revenue number that we've ever done. Well, how are we going to eclipse that by 5, 10, 15, 20% next year? What's it going to take to do that? And I think it takes a focus on the micro stuff, which is what the integrator does, and the attention to detail around average ticket, around just behavior-based stuff to be able to achieve, and those little things add up. I mean, I remember back when I was selling, and at the end of the year, I'd say, well, okay, I want to sell $1.2 million of replacement. Well, I would divide that down to a daily number, which was manageable. I mean, you look at that number and say, and every day hold myself to account to that number. And if I missed it, I knew that I'd have to outperform it the day after to make it up. And those, it's no different in terms of, athletic performance. What you'll find is that you may achieve something and then you may fall short, but sooner or later, as you chart it and you monitor it, you will start achieving it more often. And then the margin of overage that you achieve it at becomes greater and greater and greater. Big golfer. I like to play a lot of golf, and your handicap index is one of the best ways to chart your success. But when you start looking at, I started playing golf seriously again back in 2015, and my index was around a 13 as I got back into starting to play. And I remember the course that I play out, or the club that I play out of, I remember, one day I shot a 77. I was just like, yeah, that's awesome. Well, now a 77 is a bad round for me. And, my index is at a 3, which is, I think the lowest has been, way back when I was younger was a 2.5, but it got back down to a 3. And now it's, it's interesting to chart that stuff and to see how can you get to a certain place. I mean, 2015, when I started playing golf again, I was like at a 13, a 3 was something I couldn't even really think about. Right. But, so I think, all of those, athletics were really the thing that pushed me and kind of always kept my vision out ahead of me of where we're going. Because that's what it takes to be, a great athlete. You always have to be looking ahead, because the minute you stop, achieving at the next level is the minute that you get kind of passed by.
So I think you do have one of those natural abilities to look into the future. You said you're not a fortune teller, but you do have an ability to look and see things that are unseen, and kind of relating the relationship of integrator and visionary as art and science, right? So I would look at Scott as the integrator and say he's a very scientific-minded person. He looks at data, he looks at numbers, he understands formulas and those types of things that drive, the ins and outs of how the machine works. And I look at you as more of a composer, right? You open up a blank sheet of paper and you just start writing notes down, and like, where are they coming from? Well, there's no scientific reason. It's just what you think is going to sound good in the harmonies and melodies. And yet the relationship between the two, I would look at Scott and say, there's a guy who could probably build an instrument, like he could actually construct it and make it work. And you're the guy who can compose the music that will be played upon that instrument, and that relationship that works together is where we get beautiful music, right? That visionary component that you hold, do you believe that was inherent to you from essentially birthed, or do you think that was something that was coached and developed along the way?
That's a great question. Honestly, I think a lot of it was probably inherent. So I have some specific, I certainly have specific gifts, but I think then that was nurtured in me as I was growing up. I mean, I think that there was always a clear sense from my mom at an early age that I would have a tremendous amount of opportunity to lead. And so she always spoke that into me. I think it's where, so this nature nurture thing is that in the space of, big picture versus small picture, I'm far more comfortable in looking at the big picture. I'm far more comfortable in the macro space. So that's my area of comfort. Can I do the micro stuff? And it's interesting that you talk about it this way, because I had to do it when I was operating as a service manager. There's a lot of detail that's required in that. There's a lot of, planning and thinking. Same with install. It's putting stuff together. So I was able to operate and function in that space, but it wasn't the natural space that I find the greatest amount of enjoyment and freedom and flexibility. So I think any great leader will have to kind of juggle both of those worlds, but there is no question that I think that I was born with a desire to exist in the macro, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
that makes perfect sense to me, boss.
Okay, all right. But I think that doesn't have to be an excuse. And it shouldn't be an excuse, for leaders. You can't just say, well, that's just not my thing. I mean, you have to create mechanisms by which that you can exist in both of those spaces. But where you exist naturally and what you feel like you like to do naturally is where you'll have the most level of fulfillment. I mean, honestly, Nate, work doesn't feel like work to me. I don't, people talk about wanting to retire and do this. I hope that I have some plans and some things that are out in front, but if my reason that I exist in life is to create opportunities for others, I can do that until the day they put me in the ground. And
even then you've created opportunity for 6 people.
That's right. And then even then I've created more opportunity. Exactly. But I mean, the reality is, if that is what I feel like, that's what I've been created to do. And if that's what I've been created to do, I mean, I've just had the fortunate opportunity to be surrounded with a great team that I work with here. And believe it or not, I get paid to do it. I mean, it's amazing. And so, as I think about, going forward, and I mean, the future, and as we look at the future, I can think about what that looks like, and I have a good vision of that in my brain, but I just think we're scratching the surface in terms of what opportunities are available out there for people, not only in our business here locally, but in our trade and in other endeavors that we may choose to embark on. But I think that is what motivates me. And everything else, if you can do that, I mean, was it Zig Ziglar that said, that's the age old thing. If you can, help enough people get what they want, they in turn will help you get what it is that you want. And I think there's a lot of truth in that. And that is, I don't want to say that that's the mantra of my life, but in that, it's another way to talk about creating opportunity for people. And that's because at the end of the day, you can't take the money with you. And you can leave it to a bunch of great organizations. Kelly and I are involved in a bunch of great organizations that do a lot of great work, but it's the relationship and it's the people that you meet along the way that make the journey worth traveling. And I've been fortunate enough to surround myself with great mentors, and great, coworkers and people that have helped me along the way. And that's what I hope to leave in terms of a legacy.
I love that. And I can hear the passion in your voice. I can see the animation in your body as you talk about that, because it's more than just a 9 to 5. It's more than just the paycheck. It's a calling, really.
Yep.
You're living in that fulfillment. And interestingly enough, we talked about it on the podcast before, but at our organization here where Brian and I work, our core purpose is providing high dollar opportunities for our team. And that came out of an evolution of thought to get to that point. I mean, we originally started off with like, we want to be the best HVAC company in our neighborhood and that type of stuff. And we realized over the course of time that that's not really what we're trying to do. I mean, it's a byproduct of what happens. But if we can continue to provide opportunities for our team, so much of that will just take place on its own. And we don't have to focus on it if we continue focusing on opportunities. So, Matt, in that passion, in that focus that you have been such a big part of driving and shaping, as you look now at our organization locally and the trades as a whole, where do you see the vision of where the industry is going, where our organization is going, where our team is going?
So I'll just think about our trades. I mean, we will continue. I say we. I mean, we as a society will continue to place more and more value upon individuals that are in the trades and that are tradespeople. There is no better time for somebody to get in the trades than right now. I mean, there is such a lack of quality individuals that have chosen to make their profession in our world. The opportunity is tremendous. As I talk to, and so I think what will need to happen is there needs to be, and there will continue to be, a professionalization of our trades in a way that I think can really approach the level of any other profession that we have. I mean, you hear people talk about doctors and lawyers and all of these professions, but the trades are pacing in terms of income opportunity and potential. I mean, there's outliers on all of those things, but as the rank and file, plumbers today are getting paid as well as attorneys and primary care physicians are.
Blue collar is the new white collar, baby.
It is. I mean, and so I think and that will only continue because there is, and it requires, I mean, we're living in this time where we're having some challenges with labor shortages. And I think it's for a variety of reasons. I think not the least of which is that there's been pumped into our economy such a glut of money to do nothing that's got to cycle its way through, and then people will realize, oh, I actually have to do something to make to make a living. And so that is just, this is a little blip, and I think it'll pass. But I think big picture, as we continue at companies such as ours and the many others like us that are across the country, will continue to put such a professional bent and a professional polish on our trades that it's going to attract a larger swath of people to it. Listen, at the end of the day, it's still hard work, and it's still, sometimes can be a little messy, but there is no greater way to make money than what we're doing. And really, without, I think this next generation of individuals that are coming up are going to be more debt adverse than perhaps what they were in the past. So it's a great opportunity to not get into college debt and to create a great lifestyle and income for a family that you can really support. It's a wage that can support a family. So I think I'm pretty bullish in the sense that I think that we're going to continue to grow. We're going to attract the right people, but we need to present the trades in a professional way. It can't be seen, as standing in the van and Chuck in the truck and this whole unprofessional image. And that's what we've tried to create here is a professional image that, that people can be proud of, and that kids can say, yeah, that's where my dad works. I'm proud of that. He's a part of that organization. As we get, and as we start to market more and our brand becomes much more of a household name, that people people say, yeah, I know so-and-so that works there. And it's a great company. It's about image. It's about reputation. It's about how we present ourselves, not only when we're in the truck, but when we're out in the community as citizens and people of the community. And I think I'm really optimistic about what we have done here, but more specifically about what the trades are doing across the country, because there is a lot of professional tradespeople out there that are proud of what they do, that present very well, that are clean, respectful, smell great, right? And do all of those things that what a professional will do.
Absolutely. Now, Matt, we would be remiss if we didn't talk about culture with you. You're one of the biggest culture shapers that I know or have come across, and your vision and the things that have shaped you over the years of your experience have done such incredible things in defining what a company culture should be. I don't know that we have time to go. I think we'll invite you back for another time to talk about the core values in depth.
Sure.
But that's certainly part of it. What other things have you felt to be the biggest pieces of what a culture means to an organization and how you define it?
Well, I think a culture is certainly, as it's defined in an organization, has to be, it can't be just some things on a wall that people read and see. It has to be lived, and it has to be breathed. It has to be experienced. And that just doesn't happen by accident. I think the leadership needs to embrace it. I think it's easy, at some point, we have the benefit when we created, our core values as a team. And Nate, you were involved in that. Brian, you were involved in that. I was involved in that. Aaron was involved in that. Scott was involved in that. And as we spent time, we dug into it, and we wanted to make sure that it was authentic, because that's what it has to be. But it was also real and aspirational. I think as we continue to grow, and whether we're an organization that is doing $20 million of revenue, or we're doing, $220 million of revenue, as we look ahead into the future and where we want to be aspirationally speaking, it has to work the same. That culture has to be the same in order for that to grow. And that's the authentic piece. So, I think for us, that is at the core of who we are. So we talk about being professional. Well, we've defined what professional is. We've talked about being empathetic. Well, it doesn't matter how big you are. People want to know that you can see the world through their eyes. And I think as we click down through all of that, you really do see an authenticity around this building rooted in that. And, it's real. And I think it's amazing to hear how many people say this place is a lot different than other places that I've worked.
So many times that's come up.
Yeah. And I think it's about, a couple things. I think every single one of those core values is rooted in one aspect of somebody that says that. Whether it's, it's a professional environment in terms of what they see around, whether it's the fact that we're empathetic, there's a sense of gratitude, or that there's a drive that we all have to achieve and accomplish something that's beyond ourselves and greater than ourselves. That stuff is really authentic here in everybody that we have on our team at some aspect, because it's what we hire around. We look for those core values when we hire. And you know what? If we don't have it and we can't develop it in someone, they get fired as a result of it. So it is baked into the sauce in a way that is pretty authentic. But I just love hearing. I love when people say, and we usually do a core value training with new employees, and there's usually 12 to 13 people in the room, and I lead that training, and I go down through our core values, and I talk about, the reason that we exist, which is to create, as you mentioned earlier, high dollar opportunities for our team. That is real. And when they kind of experience that and go do ride-alongs as a part of their training program and spend some time with our trainers and hear what the employees are saying, they're like, that's real. That's not only words on a paper or something that I've heard, but that's who we are. And it shocks them in a way. And that, I think, for me, is probably some of the most satisfying stuff I get out of those meetings, those core value meetings, because what it means is that it's authentic. It's a part of who we are. That's real culture.
Well, it's one of those reality check moments too, because you're faced with realizing that, wow, there's actually a place that's like this, at the same time that you're like, oh, I just worked in that other place for 10 years.
Right.
I could have been here. I
Right.
could have been somewhere else.
Right.
And it's kind of one of those stark moments where you're faced with the regret of the past as well as the joy of the future. And I think it shocks people in a lot of ways.
It does. And there's a flip side to that. And I would be remiss if I didn't say that, but it's amazing. And I've been in that room during those core values trainings, and in about 3 or 4 weeks, people can flip on that because they realize it's real, but they don't realize what it is to exist in that culture.
Right. You can't be a part of the wall. You can't be a brick in the wall without being a brick. That's the way that it's built,
Right.
You have to be part of it.
You have to be part of it. And so what I found is when we're intentional about talking about that stuff, a lot of people like the thought of that until they live in that, and they have to be a part of that and own it. Otherwise, they remove themselves from the equation. And usually inside of 4 or 5 weeks during the training process, you'll find out if they can say one thing and we can vet them, and we do a great job of doing that in the hire. But if they don't last, if they last more than 5 weeks, they're probably a pretty good fit. If they don't, it's so that's the beauty of being authentic. It's not because I'm sure some people come in and say, "Oh, this is great stuff. I've heard this all before. We'll see what happens."
Yeah, the facade.
Right. But I've also heard people say, "You know what? I don't," because guess what? If you want to be driven, there's accountability. That's a part of that. If you want to be professional, there's things that you're going to have to do in order to be professional, and it requires levels of accountability that people aren't prepared to embrace.
And there's no faking it when you have your 30-day review with us, and 6 people are sent a survey based on each one of our core values to take on. Matt Buckwalter, say you're about to have your 30-day review. Well, 6 of us get a survey and fill out on a scale of 1 to 3. Where is he at in professionalism? Where is he at in empathy? Where is he at in gratitude? Where is he at in drive?
Right.
And we're not taking that survey in front of you.
Right.
But we are going to have a conversation based around the score of that survey. And you also have to take that survey about yourself. And then we see where the average score lines up with what you think. And we have a conversation about it.
That's exactly right.
Conversation is, you're doing great. Here are some places to improve. Here's what we appreciate about you. Or here are some places to improve, and here's the deadline.
Yep. It's amazing to see how individuals will react when they have to self-evaluate. That's always a fascinating thing to me.
Well, Matt, before we start nearing the end here, I did find the list that you had mentioned earlier, and it's actually Tall Paul Redmond from the To The Point podcast. They had Terry Nicholson on their show, and then Tall Paul on Facebook. One of the groups we're in together posted this list, and it is the Crown Champion list. I guess it was the first list?
Yeah, that's what a great list, right?
Would be like early 2000s.
This would probably have been early 2000s. My guess it would have been 2002, 2003.
So it's Jim Abrams, John Young, Terry Nicholson, Tom Hopkins, Carl DeBenny, Lon Castle, and then yours truly,
Matt Buckwalter.
Yeah, buddy.
So that's an interesting. So all of those individuals, with the exception of Tom, were employees of Clockwork at the time, but they had all achieved in their own worlds. And so technically, ring number 7 was the first one up for grabs. So I was pretty excited about that.
That's awesome.
So when you say the first one up for grabs, that ring was the first one grabbed by an actual equipment salesperson.
That is correct. Well, by a comfort advisor when it was offered at the time. Yeah.
Okay.
So, and I think I achieved it. The deal was the first one to $1 million that year got the ring. And I think I got there at I sold $1 million of replacement HVAC equipment by September, I want to say 6th or 9th or something like that. Nice. So it was roughly halfway through September of that year that I was able to do that. So John Fletcher, I think, was shortly behind, but I think he was out of Omaha, Nebraska, John McCarthy's shop.
Right on.
Yeah. So such a good memories. I'll have to break out that ring. And it's the biggest, gaudiest thing you've ever seen. So it looks like I won a Super Bowl, but it was kind of like winning a Super Bowl.
Maybe you'll be the next James Bond.
Yeah, that's true.
Right?
That's true.
I think they're looking.
The 007. Now I'm certainly a Bond fan of that franchise.
Well, hey Matt, we're going to bring things in for a landing here, and as I so appreciate you kind of sharing your story with us. I think there's so many nuggets along the way and things that you can even look back on now. So many times, we go about living our life and we don't retrospectively look back on what has gotten us here. Yep. And I want to call attention to our listeners now who are most likely not sitting in the current chair that you are. Mm-hmm. They're coming to this podcast, they're hearing your story from all different angles. Some of them are on the phone, some of them are in the field, some of them are thinking of exiting the trades and they're kind of burned out as you were with sports. And others are looking for the next thing and they're trying to figure out if, how can they grow and what that's going to look like. So if you had that mixed audience in front of you, and you were giving the company meeting to 100 employees with all those different perspectives and roles, and you looked back across the course of your life and you would say, these are the things that have made the most difference in what got me from there to here, what would they be?
What a great way to tee it up, Nate. I think, listen, success and opportunities comes in the most unexpected packages. And I think that if you would know me and you would look at me, I'm probably the most unlikely guy that you would think that would be found maybe in the world that is the trades, in terms of the taste that I have, the lifestyle that I enjoy leading, and the things that I do. That I'm not.
Not too many psychology degrees in the trades either.
No, there's not too many psychology degrees, and I'm not a guy that there has never been a whole lot of dirt underneath my fingernails.
See that.
I don't mean that in a bad. I mean, I can be handy around the house and do the things that I do, but honestly, what I realized at a very early age is that the trades were not full of the MBA type guys, the business guys, and I saw opportunity there. I saw opportunity to help create opportunity for people that are tremendously skilled with their hands and the ability to do stuff. And so how can we create an opportunity in a place where they can get paid what they're worth at the end of the day? And I think we've done that here. We've really done that. We've created opportunity for individuals that are passionate about helping others and working with their hands to get paid with what they're worth, truly. And as a consequence, I was able to find a place that I could, provide for my family in the process of doing that, and fulfill a lot of my passion, which is, like we talked about earlier, creating opportunities for others to be successful and to succeed. And I think that is, there is no better place than this. There is no better place than this company. There's no better place than the trades to really be able to do that, because we as a team believe wholeheartedly in, the opportunity that we've all been given and want to continue to share that, because as a result, all boats rise. And I think the opportunities are limitless in our marketplace for that, and are limitless across the country for that. It's just about putting the right team of people together and getting them to kind of all row in the same direction. And there's really nothing else that we can't accomplish that we set our mind to accomplish. I mean, listen, the last 20 years is proof of that. The next 20 will validate it as well, but the proof is in what we've accomplished over the last 20 years as an organization. It's been remarkable.
Absolutely. And if I'm just thinking now that if I'm sitting in that audience and I'm saying, all right, yeah, Matt, I mean, it's easy for you to say now. It's easy for you to say that now. You're an owner of a multi-million-dollar organization. Certainly, the Porsche outside indicates that you're not living on ramen anymore.
Love my Porsche.
Why, you and not me? What do you say to that?
Listen, I think all of us have a story to tell, and there's good times and there's bad times. I mean, there's challenges and there's victories. I think, did I get lucky? Sure I did. Was my luck as a result of a ton of hard work? 100%. I can give you, and if we want to drill down, I can give you probably several defining moments of opportunity in my life. The biggest one that I attribute to where I am now is that providential, and I think it was providential. I think it was divinely appointed, my meeting with Larry Rohr at that house. I didn't know him, and there was no reason that I selected to rent that house other than it felt like it was the right thing. I didn't know who I was going to meet on the other end of that. That set my life in a motion and in a direction that it was completely turned on its head at that moment in time. And I think, as someone of faith, I think that was a divinely appointed meeting. I don't know how else to describe it. And I think we all have those things in our lives that we can look at and say, that was the moment that my life changed. And I think I've had a lot of great mentors before that. I've had a lot of great mentors since that. But that Larry saw something in me and invested in me in a way that changed my life, changed the life of my kids, and probably will change the life of their kids. So it's that butterfly effect. We talk about that, but that was and there's been a ton of challenging times since then and a ton of great times since then. But as I look back in my life, that was one of the moments that, professionally speaking, it just spun, it completely turned it upside down on its head. And it was a really exciting, going forward. But I got excited about, I could see the opportunity. For the first time, I was given the opportunity to grab a hold of something and to run with it. And so, what would I say to the person that's listening to the podcast right now, that's in the truck, that's not sitting in my seat, is you need to invest in every single day to understand that it is one foot in front of the other, and there's going to be setbacks, there's going to be challenges, there's going to be wonderful victories. But you have to have a clear sense of where you're going. And
waste no day.
Waste no day. And I honestly believe that, you may fulfill all of those things within our organization if you're an employee of our company. You may not. But what I hope is that when you're here, you are a better person when you leave than when you came. That you're learning. That's why we invest in our training. That's why we do this podcast. It's to create better people, because better people create better organizations. Better organizations serve customers better. They make more money too. And that's kind of an important thing. It's not the reason we do it, but daggone it, we don't come to work for free.
Right.
We want to make the most of these days. Waste no day, waste no opportunity, because every day is a gift, and we're not assured of tomorrow. So I think there's a tremendous amount of opportunity, even for those that are in our organization, but those who have not yet joined us. We have great plans, and that's a whole nother podcast to talk about what the future looks like for us. But it's exciting. I'm excited about it, and stay tuned.
Such a good place to leave on there, Matt. And I think it's indicative of you and the opportunity that was given to you that you now bestow upon others, right? Like that's kind of the heritage that you're living in, that Larry and so many others gave you the opportunity, and now you have chosen to plant that seed and harvest the fruit in giving opportunities to others. That's a really cool place.
Yep. It is a cool place. I agree with you. I'm super excited about where I am and about where we are.
Awesome. Well, it's so good to have you on the show today, Matt. It's been an honor to have you and to work with you over the past many years here. Thank you so much for joining us today and for the opportunities that you've given to both Brian and myself and countless others.
Thanks, guys.
Yep. Thanks, boss.
Yep. Thanks.
Hey, we really hope you enjoyed this interview with Matt. It was so good to hear from him and his story, and there's so much more there that I think we will explore in future podcasts. But for today's purposes, what we want to focus you on is the opportunities. What opportunities have you been granted, and are you capitalizing on them? Are you making the most of them, or are you kind of giving them the cold shoulder? Is there something right now that's been knocking on your door that you've been ignoring, and the knocking is getting louder and louder and louder? What are you going to do with that? Others of you have already been granted opportunities, and you've made a lot of those opportunities. And for you, we encourage you to then pass that on, to bestow those opportunities to others who are looking for direction, who are looking for a place, who are looking for that ladder, you might say. Give them the opportunity that could be life-changing, that could actually alter the direction of their path, their future, and their family. And if you are in the position to create those opportunities, we encourage you that is something that this trade, that this industry needs so badly, is more and more opportunities. And if you're one of the seekers of opportunities, don't give up. Keep pursuing. Keep choosing to look for more. Keep developing yourself into becoming a better version. Make sure that the you that you wake up today is better than the you that woke up yesterday. And as always, we encourage you, when you do wake up, to choose to waste no day.